MMA, and today we're going to drink some Ballantine's India Pale Ale. Now, Ballantine's is an old brand, and it went out of business. They were acquired by Falstaff back in the 60s, which is kind of funny because the beer I grew up on, Narragansett, was also acquired by Falstaff and also driven out of business by Falstaff. Now they're out there. Somebody new brewing Narragansett now, and they're contract brewing it. And Pabst owns the name for Ballantine's, and they are contract brewing it. This is their first thing back under that brand label. Now I remember drinking Ballantine's back in the day, and I remember drinking Ballantine's Ale, and it was kind of a pale ale, nice, a smoother mouthfeel than the lagers that are around, and a more rounded, less biting, probably less corn. I maybe had the IPA once or twice. I seem to remember more of an English style IPA. Again, kind of more of a malty flavor with a little bit of hoppier flavor at the end. So we're going to go ahead and give this one a try and see what we got. It looks like supposedly they've lost the recipe, so they're trying to do it by memory. It's 7 point. A lot of heat and humidity here today, even though it's late September. 7.2% alcohol by volume, 70 IBUs, and this was bottled on 8/5, so we're about a month and a half, about a month and a half old on it. We'll give it a pour. As always, if you like the reviews, please subscribe. We're always looking for new friends. And go ahead and leave some comments, because I learned when you guys ask me questions. Fairly typical looking IPA with, you know, a dark yellow, light orange. We got about, what, 2.5 fingers of head on it. The head is fairly tan, tanner than you see on a lot of IPAs. So I wouldn't call it brown yet, but it's closer to that. There are some light carbonation going through it, some bubbles. And reasonably clear. And you get a nice mango, citrus, peach, grapefruit aroma. And then underneath it I'm getting a little bit of pine resin, not a lot. Say like that cut grass more than pine maybe. But yeah, really kind of like a mango peach, you know, like a fancy ice cream. And then a hint, just a hint of the caramel from the malt. Let's go ahead and give it a taste. Okay, this is what we got. Got a little bit of malt, got a fairly strong bitter at the back end. Does seem to have a very sharp, astringent mouthfeel. Like the taste is kind of clean, sharp, more like a lager than an IPA. I have a hint of the caramel. I seem to be tasting alcohol, which surprises me at 7.2% alcohol. I wouldn't be expecting that. And then the mango-y, peachy is not as prevalent. I'm trying to see if I can pick some of it up. Malt, caramel, yeah, a hint of the peach in there, and then more on the peach on the flavor. But getting a real bitter back end taste on the back of the tongue that's starting to overwhelm some of the other flavors. So it's kind of more of a West Coast style, and I don't think this is probably anything like the original. Not that there's anything wrong with that per se, but the idea that they were trying to recreate the original and this is what it was like, I think is way off base. Again, back in the day, nobody was making beer like this. Again, we had a million and one lagers. Actually, we had about 83 different companies that were making lagers, including Falstaff, which bought a bunch of brands and then went out of business themselves. You know, you had your Pabst, you had your Schlitz, you had your Miller, you had your Budweiser, Stroh's, Heilmann's. You know, there was a bunch of flavor. Some of the local guys, the Schaefer's. And Ballantine was really the only ale that I can remember out there. We had some German lagers, and then we had a few things like, which you couldn't even find there on there, the Ankerstein beer, which was a little bit of a different thing. So back in the day, they didn't have anything like this. I would call this more of a West Coast style because it had deep bitter on the back end. It does have some interesting tasting notes on it. Number wise, I'm going to give it an 80 out of 100. So we're saying just barely a B. Nothing wrong with it per se. I actually think my scoring's been creeping up, so I'm trying to intentionally be a little bit harder on my scoring. So an 80 out of 100, drinkable. Probably wouldn't buy it again, mostly because I don't prefer the bitter on the back end, but some people do like that. Till next time, keep drinking.